Hello, everyone. Today is Tuesday, September 12th, 2023. This is a meeting of the SIG Network Policy API subgroup to SIG Network. We are a CNCF sponsored meeting, so please follow their guidelines and rules. And yeah, let's have a good meeting today. Agenda's fairly light. I'll just say I think Surya had some questions about her NPEP. Otherwise, there's nothing on there. So if you want to talk about anything else, please go ahead and add it to the agenda as we're talking about Surya's questions. Some things I just wanted to highlight like really quickly before we hop into your question, Surya, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, go for it.
I took a stab at starting to update our project board for the road to beta. This kind of came out of a suggestion from Antonio in our last SIG Network meeting. He was like, you need to have a roadmap and you need to like set explicit dates or else stuff's never going to get done. So the first step for me was trying to clean up our roadmap. And this is the roadmap, right? Our project board. I tried to add all the NPEP issues and PRs that we're working on that I think are kind of blocking us towards beta. And then also a bunch of other issues that I think are also blocking us towards beta. So just as you're making any new issues, please, and you feel like they need to be done before we do a beta release, please add them here. And next step, not necessarily we have to do today, but we probably want to set some like general dates. Like say we want to make it to beta by December and then work towards that rather than us just kind of like reviewing PRs ad hoc, right? I think some deadlines will be good. So yeah, you can go see this board pretty easily under our projects. It's again kind of inspired from Gateway API, so shout out to them. And
this is a drag and drop thing.
So the only trick it's drag and drop once you get it in the board, but the main kind of annoying part is you have to go like if you opened a new issue, you have to make sure that the project is set. And then everything's drag and drop. But you just want to make sure that the project's set.
Okay, I see. Yeah, because I see I think two things in the no status column should be moved to in progress PRs. I think some is Oliver who
Sweet.
did a pause selector PR, and my name port change PR is also a PR in progress. So
that's awesome. Okay, so let me move that to in progress.
Well, that's smooth.
Andrew, most people probably don't have permission to.
Right. Yeah.
Sorry, am I cutting?
You're kind of choppy. Can you try again, Dan? Ooh. Now we've totally lost you, but I think what he was trying to say is that the permissions are probably only, they're only me. So I'm gonna add Yang and Dan since they're both maintainers just off the bat. What the heck? I don't know why.
Try DY. Yeah, do DYANGG like my GitHub handle. That might
Yeah, there you are.
Okay.
Sweet. I'm gonna set you two as admin. Is there anyone else that's in this group that wants to be moving these cards around? I'm fine to give other people here who are active contributors to the project right access just so they can actually like move their own issues around. Is there anyone else here who wants that? I'm assuming Surya does.
Yes, me too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sweet. You might have to, the people I just invited, you might have to accept something. Maybe not, but now you should be able to. And as good time goes on, if people want to make edits to this board, just ping us in Slack. We can add you. So yeah, step one is kind of getting this kind of cleaned up, which I think it's almost there. Step two is going to be, let's put some dates and deadlines on this. So we can start thinking about that. Obviously, we're upstream. Everyone has, you know, a million other responsibilities, but I think it really would be good for us to give some deadlines, especially for when I go to Sig Network and say like, look, we're trying to get to beta by X. So like, we'd really like some of wider Sig Network works reviews on certain things, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that was one small thing. Any questions about that? And this is just for admin network policy. So obviously there's a bunch of other stuff to think about, but. Cool. And if there's an enhancement we're missing that customers are asking for, users are going to want, that we want to get early, like now is the time to add it because as we are going to have to like kind of lock this down, right? At some point we should say like, okay, we're not going to accept any more enhancements for beta. Like this is what we're going to do. And that's it, right? So I think we have a pretty good queue. I can't think of any at the moment that I want to add. So if there are others, like for folks watching or recording, this is kind of the time. Past due, I'd say. But
Do you think we should wait after KubeCon though? Like, would there be like tons of new things that you think that's probably going to be in there, or?
it's a good question. I'm not against it. I guess that kind of comes with how we want to think about dates. Shane, I know you said you have kind of this project, but do you like publicly announce like your intended dates to get to a certain goal somewhere else, or do you build it into this board somehow?
We have milestones like releases that we usually set a date for once we get within a couple months of that date. It's
Okay.
usually flexible because everything's based on volunteering time, so there's never any guarantees.
Right.
But I wouldn't say we don't have after the GA. We're intending to have a roadmap where like the minor releases are kind of planned out as to what might go in them and when they might go out a little bit further out. But currently we don't do that. It's more ad hoc. But after GA,
Okay.
we'll be doing that.
Sounds good. I think milestones are probably a good way to do it. Cool. I'll try to look into that. I think that'll work good because then we can have, you know, different milestones for different issues. Obviously, like if we could have an issue that says, you know, lock this board, and that could have a milestone set of, you know, right after KubeCon. But yeah, I think that's a good point, Yang. We might get some user stories we never even thought about at KubeCon. So, and it's coming up pretty quick. So I'm not against leaving it open. Maybe this is right for, well, actually, yeah, we'll probably be presenting on this in the maintainers track talk anyway. So
Right.
that'll be
Yeah.
a perfect forum. Yeah, cool. I like that. Good point. Okay. Sweet.
So yeah,
Okay.
our road to GA board included many different milestones, V5 all the way up to V080, which just came out, and now V1.
Cool. Do you, as the maintainers of the project, like, are you Shane, like managing all of that board, or do you just let a bunch of people? That's a lot of work. Okay.
So I do the project management stuff. I'm the because it was needed and nobody else wanted to do it. However,
Okay.
recently, as in the last few weeks, I kind of pushed the issue of us having a maintainers meeting separate from the community meeting, because the community meeting, I would recommend having a separate maintainers meeting when you're trying to hit some timelines at
Yeah.
some kind of regularity, because a lot of stuff, I almost, sorry, I won't swear. A lot of stuff usually shakes out in a smaller setting, like maintainers and maybe people who are like approvers and reviewers are good for that meeting.
Okay.
And focus it not on like, the ongoing issues, new things, only focus it on the board. Like look at the board, go over things, what's getting out of band, what's in progress, but that person disappeared a month ago. Like keeping on track of that if you want. Basically, if you want velocity, I'd recommend doing a maintainers meeting.
Yep. 100%. Okay. All good suggestions.
Might actually be different here because it's a smaller group, but that's just something that worked for us in a larger group. So let that be my inspiration to you. I don't know if you need it or not.
Right. We're hoping it becomes a bigger group after KubeCon. That's our goal. Anyway.
I would be shocked if you don't grow significantly after KubeCon.
We could use the help. So that's awesome. Okay, sorry, I totally jumped in front of your agenda item, Surya. So I am going to toss it back over to you. Go over some of your questions on the egress enhancement, which is shuttling towards completion. So you have the floor.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, I like that shuttling towards completion phrase. Let's hope we can get it merged soon-ish. But firstly, let me start by saying thank you everyone who has reviewed the enhancement. And we are almost there, I feel, right? Some of the comments that are left are from Dan and Rahul, and I agree to what both of them are saying, and which is why I'm bringing these points up to the wider team meeting. So we have, the first question is around pass action, right? So just to shed some context there, we have the deny and the allow, which is the same as network policies, but we have this new pass action in admin network policies, which is not there in our network policies v1 API, right? And what that does is basically delegates traffic that matches the admin network policy rule over to the network policy. So it's a way of I want to say it's a way of communication between ANP and NP, but really this exists in the east-west traffic. But question is, do we really want it, or is there valid use cases for this to also exist on the egress traffic? I actually didn't even think too much about it, and I added it just as, oh, we have it for east-west and it's going to be a part of the same API, so why not add it for egress kind of a thing? But Dan rightfully points out that we do not have a valid use case. So this is where I want to bring it up to the wider forum to see if anybody has a valid use case that I then can add to the NPEP. And if we do not have a valid use case, my plan is to keep it, but it will be experimental or extended feature for the egress traffic use case, so that implementations are not forced to implement it because there is no valid use case, right? So I don't want people to just implement it if there is no use for it downstream. But at the same time, if people do have use cases and they want to, they can opt into using this. So that's where I am, which is a sweet spot or compromise on both ways, but I'm open to suggestions and opinions.
So just to clarify, I was not suggesting that we should not implement this or even downgrade it to experimental or anything. I was just saying we don't have a user story for it. So don't write a pretend user story for it saying, as an admin, I will use the pass feature. That's not a user story. I mean, it would be more work to not implement pass for cluster egress, given that it's presumably going to share all the same code as the other stuff, which does have pass. So, I mean, I think it should be there, but there shouldn't be a user story for it. And then, as I said there, if it turned out that there was some, good reason to get rid of it, we could say, oh, well, we don't have a user story anyway, so we could get rid of it. But until that happens, I feel like it should be there, but not be part of any user story.
Got it. But here's my counter thing saying, if there is no user story, is it okay to just keep it as an implementation? Do user stories gate what we put in the API or not?
No, I would say. User stories are supposed to explain how we ended up with the API that we ended up with, but they don't define the API.
I think in the original KEP, that was a little murky. but in like, and that was just because the KEP went on so many cycles. So like we had to justify everything we did in the API design by pointing back to the user stories. In this case, the justification is not necessarily an explicit user story for that you've added here in your egress MPEP. It's more that like for API consistency, it makes a lot of sense to do this. So I'm kind of with Dan on it. Like, you don't have to have one if there's not a good one. But like, isn't there a good one? Can we not literally just say like, oh, admin wants to allow namespace owners to
No, but
decide
again,
if they want their
That
pods
you're
struck in
making
the
it
user.
up though, right?
yeah, like that's it's
So I think my
That's
take
what
on
I did
this.
on the NPEP. I made it up. Sorry,
Yeah,
go ahead.
so I think my take on this is that, you know, unless implementing paths for egress bears implementation burdens on some implementations, so we don't want to do that. Or having passing egress makes it really confusing for people using this feature. Those are the two kind of reasons we might want to have this dropped, but otherwise we might not even have to have a user story for this, and people just get it for free, right? So when you wanted to do if somebody wanted to do this, you can do that, but we don't have a user story for it. So, you know, we don't advise people to write a policy like that. It's kind of like what I saw.
+1. I was making it up, but I agree 100%.
Okay, I think that clarifies my point also, because I think I was really gating that everything going into the API has to be justified with a user story, and you do not just add things to the API if it's not having a use case. Maybe that's where I went wrong.
It's
And
that's
I'm
not
happy to just remove.
Yeah, that's not a bad default position to take, but I think to Dan's point, it's not a hard and fast rule. It's not like you don't break the rule.
I
There's
mean,
times when you're
yeah.
gonna get things for free and stuff like that. It's a good default position to be like, I don't really want to add anything to this API that nobody's gonna actually want to implement. But at the same time, if you got something that's just coming along for the ride, you know.
So as a contrast, in the tenancy API, Nadia mentioned that she didn't have a user story for tenant definitions that involve ports. And sure, we already have ports in the admin network policy API, but you know, it seems pretty obvious, or at least to me, that yeah, you really don't want ports in the tenant definition, right? So in that case, the lack of a user story does suggest that maybe we don't want that feature there. But I think in this case, you know, pass is already there. It doesn't need a strong justification to stay in this part of the feature as well.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm glad we got a consensus on that. I'm actually happy to then go back to the NPEP, and then I'll just really just call out that we do not have a user story for pass as a note, but we are going to get it for, I won't use the words free, but you know, I'll say that we will still support it. And I guess we don't have to make it extended conformance, right? We make it core in that case.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. And the same context for the host network, or also, right? And also for the rest of all of you on the call, if you do come up with a user story, please do go to the NPEP and leave a comment. But as of now, I'm just going to go ahead with mentioning that we do not have a user story. The same thing for host network pods traffic use case is this. We moved the API server use case as a separate thing outside of the nodes and the host networks and the VMs and all that, right? Like, so it's going to be a special entity and it's a separate user story. So that leaves, and that was the only user story I had under host network pod. So this is CNI pod to host network pod policy case. So now we are left with no user story for the host network pods as well. So there's two options. Either I completely remove this goal from my NPEP, or we keep it when we do a host selector, but we make it extended conformance like we had decided, because not every implementation can differentiate between a node and a host selector anyways. Any takes or anybody opposing that decision?
So in this case, I feel like given that many implementations wouldn't be able to implement this feature anyway, that dropping it would be better.
Okay, yeah, if I mean the only requirement that I had was trying to get a KAPI server that is a host network pod implemented. But since that's covered within the KAPI server user story, I don't have any other use cases for host network per se. So I'm okay with that suggestion of just dropping that altogether from the goals.
Yeah, in my experience with Entria, I think it's 98% of the cases, if not 100%, people are coming to us saying that why don't you select host network pods? It's because they want to select Kubernetes API server, right? So I can't think of another use case for host network pods as well. So
Go ahead, Raul.
Just something to clarify because I got a little bit lost. Are we saying that we're selecting the API server as a peer or as the primary?
I think as a peer.
As a peer, okay.
Yeah, so I can actually provide a little bit insight on some of the quote unquote use case that we saw. Is actually in the cloud scenario where I think let me try to find the exact issue, but essentially I think what it does is that some users open up an issue and saying that in EKS environment they don't have the I don't know if it's kubedns or something running in the kube system cluster, but they have some other like the default Kubernetes service running in maybe another VPC. So their workloads needs to talk to the default Kubernetes service via the control plane node IP, which they want to select as a host network. Wait a second. I think I'm not making sense here, but let me try to.
I was lost.
Yeah, let me try to find the exact issue, but yeah.
We're trying to do multi-cloud, right? Or multi-cluster communication.
I don't think this is in. I'm not sure if this is in relation to multi-cluster. Like I don't think it's in that context.
No,
I think it's literally.
You don't have any multi-cluster rules, right? You have two clusters, and then it's normal egress, ingress over the host. Maybe not.
Right, you can go ahead. I'll do some digging offline. Yeah.
Did we answer Raul's question?
Yeah. No, I mean, I just wanted to double check that it was only, we're saying select pods, like regular pods, and allow or deny egress to the API server. And that makes sense.
Right. Cool. And then like as to whether or not things should be extended or not, Surya, like I don't think we have to know that right now. I think like if we get to the point where we've, written a new feature, or written the YAML for this, the API definition, and we have implementers, right, i.e. you or Yang, and then whoever else comes on board in the future telling us like, oh, we can't do this, then it's a strong case for us to make it experimental, right, or extended support. So I think for now we go with core if you and Yang are cool with it from Antria and Oven Kubernetes side of things. We can always, bump it back out.
Yeah, that's a good point. Sounds good. Yeah, so I'll update the NPEP with the two consensus items that we discussed today. And then hopefully we can
Sweet.
see if you're close to merge.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you so much. It's awesome. First NPEP about ready to be merged. That's a big milestone, right? Thanks for all the hard work on it. Okay, that's all we got on the agenda. Is there other stuff folks want to discuss today?
I have a fun topic, right, which is something that I got as a feedback from one of the customers I was talking to last week. It was around pass action, coincidentally. And another way of looking at pass action is to not define it in the first place, right? Like if you do not define an admin network policy, but you have a network policy, it's the same as passing, right? Like in a sense of the way it works. Because today, the way network policy and baseline admin network policy work is anyhow, because of the way they're evaluated per the theoretical definition, it's always ANP first and then NP and then BANP. So from an end user perspective, just defining the BANP is automatically passing on traffic from NP to the BANP, right? Like as far as they're concerned, like they don't have to explicitly ask a network policy to pass it. And they were thinking like the same. There's a little bit inconsistency in the way we say, oh yeah, you can pass from ANP to NP, but really, as far as they're concerned, if they are safe, if as an admin, if they're safe enough to avoid even creating an ANP, it's kind of the same. Like even if, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, I guess maybe it's an implementation detail in the way I do it in OVNK. I don't know how Andrea does it, but the way we do tiers in how we evaluate it and how our diagram looks, where you're guaranteed that the ANP rules are evaluated first and then the NP and then the BANP. The pass thing was a bit of an interesting thing for them to, like, they were just mentioning it.
So
I think
oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. No, you're good. You got it.
I was going to say, I think the point of pass was so that basically you could create a hole in an ANP. That like, if you wanted to say that like, you know, if it's on port 80, then pass. Otherwise, if it's, you know, to these things, then drop it. And so then you're saying like, you know, drop egress to these pods, but allow network policy to decide whether to drop port 80 to those pods.
Yep, Dan said exactly what I was gonna say. I feel like we went around in circles for a long time on how to define exceptions to ANPs and what that means, and we settled on making it explicit, right? Like obviously an exception to any rule you could say is the same thing as not defining it, but we kind of ended up with pass. What was the other one we had, Yang? It was like empower. We had a whole host of ideas that we ended up with pass.
Yeah, the folks in Signal really didn't like it, I think. But yeah, but I feel like yes, this is kind of like a little bit more into the philosophical kind of things where, you know, it really depends on how you look at it, right? So it's an elephant. If you look at it at different angles, you see different things. But by the end of the day, if people understand what it is and know how to use it, we're good. We just wanted to come up with a good, you know, starting point on how we explain this, so that we hope, you know, people really, really understand what's the rationale behind it and know how to use it, basically.
Yeah, and you assigned that issue to yourself. I opened an issue last week to write like a best practices doc for AMP, and this kind of came out.
I'm working on it right now, actually, because I think
cool.
I'm doing a write up. I think it's gonna be beneficial for KubeCon as well, right? Because we have the talk, the main talk where we explain what the API is. So I think what I take from the issue is that we have a lot of examples on the website that we have, but we never had an example where we say that, hey, in this cluster we have a bunch of namespaces and we have an AMP and a bunch of KMPs together in that cluster. Now how would the traffic look like? We don't have an example like that, right? So
that's one of the big ways,
right?
That's one of the big things. I think the other thing to think about, maybe I didn't convey it in that issue, was like with network policy, you know, we have docs all over and upstream that's like, we suggest that you do this, right? We suggest that you lock down everything in your cluster explicitly, even though it happens implicitly, and then poke holes in it because that's what makes the most sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Default deny all, and then a bunch of policies.
Right, yeah.
So like having something along the same lines for AMP and BAMP, like and maybe Surya can speak a little bit more to it, maybe not, but we had QE testing the feature and they were getting a little confused, right? They defined an ANP really quickly that like denied everything, and then they realized, oh wow, we have to write like a custom rule now to poke holes for our control plane, right? Because everything's gonna bust. So just kind of having a doc that makes that explicit, says like, this is how we would use it, or this is how we've seen it used, right? So
makes
from
sense.
from findings from Antria or OpenShift, etc.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of like completely different or the opposite way, right? Rather than, I wanted to lock anything up and then poke holes like Kubernetes network policy. In admin network policy, because it's a little bit more powerful, you don't really want it to just blindly throw an admin network policy there. You would really want to have a really specific traffic pattern. You wanted to explicitly allow a block for you to actually apply one of these. You don't just, throw it in and say, okay, I just wanted to.
Just remember that everyone has been using and stuck with network policy for the past however many years, 5 years now. So they're that's very ingrained in their head at this point, right? I don't know. We'll see. As we get more feedback and stuff.
I want to maybe I'm not sure what the right place to do this is, but I do think we need more examples of baseline admin network policy, because I think I had a conversation with you, Andrew, and Yang a while back now, where I was very confused about what BANP is actually supposed to do, and I think it's kind of underspec'd in general. Like there aren't enough worked examples to make it clear what happens. Like maybe the wording is true, but it's pretty dense.
Yeah, maybe we can because I know our QE team in Red Hat has been like making some scenarios. So maybe I can get my hands on some of those test cases and we can upstream them, and that might help because it'll actually show you YAML and examples. But hopefully Yang's document will help as well. But I totally agree.
Yeah, because it's not clear to me from the docs currently that BNP is not really a fall through, it's a default. Like you don't fall through network policies and hit BANP. It's just if there's no network policy, you evaluate BANP. And that's actually like it's consistent with network policy, but that doesn't mean it's not surprising given how ANP works.
Right. I agree, because there's no fall through for network policy, right?
Right.
You either hit the allow that's explicitly written, or you hit the unexplicit deny, which just captures everything, right? So there's no fall through. It captures everything in the namespace, basically. So yeah.
I agree. Maybe we've used the word pass through a little too liberally here. It is confusing.
Right. I'm hoping a couple of examples with diagrams and sample YAMLs can help solve this issue. And I'm actually working on it, so I'll keep you guys posted.
Sweet. Thank you so much. Yeah, let's just make sure it's on the website as well. Okay. Sweet. All good stuff. I feel like we're making good progress, kind of looking forward to KubeCon. Excited to see everyone who's going to be there. I think that's all I got for today. We'll keep reviewing NPEPs, try to get Surya's one in ASAP, and keep kind of moving along on the others. So is there anything else folks want to talk about?
Oh, hey, Andrew. Thinking we could talk about Cyclonus if there's still time.
There is still time. Take it away.
Awesome. Might share my screen if
Yep. Let me give you rights. Okay, you should be good to share now.
Okay. All right. Yeah, so last meeting we talked about Cyclonus a bit, and then the overall takeaway was to look more into the implementation, see if it's feasible. So I tried to flush out more of what in my opinion, would be a good idea to do if we go along with it. And then I was looking at the code to see how easy it would be to do that. So one other idea that you guys were talking about was just selecting parts of Cyclonus to keep. So overall, I was thinking probably the most beneficial parts would be the test case generation. I think this is just an example here where it maybe I could zoom in a little better.
Much better, thanks.
So there's like a framework where you can kind of programmatically create tests like this. I'm not really sure what the state of our conformance is right now. And maybe this is, all these things are already part of that, but I'll just go into what the Cyclonus kind of looks like. So yeah, you just have like steps for each test case, and you can do actions like labeling pods, creating a policy in that programmatic way. So it ends up being a pretty quick process to create new tests. And then you can add tags, like here, there's a tag for create policy. And if you wanted to just look at tests that had create policy, or say if you just wanted to look at tests that had ANP, you could filter based on that. So that's the flow for programming tests.
Cool.
Then this is like the Cyclonus formatting here. The main benefit maybe is parsing the policy into a table and kind of giving the human language of what is going on within it. What I was thinking, if we wanted to extend Cyclonus to ANP, was thinking probably be beneficial to incorporate both the policy table and test generation, because test generation would kind of be free once you create a probing like expected connectivity function.
So that on that little snippet there, it looks like you're defining, right, explicit test cases. When you say there's generated test cases, is it literally just like a matrix? So like you'll have, right, is it a connectivity matrix, or is that is auto-generated, or is it a test matrix that's auto-generated?
So there's like a list of tests that are run, like here, some of the tests, like set namespace to X is one of them, and it has one step here, and then it sees like if the connections are correct or wrong. That isn't the best example.
I think I get what you're saying though.
Yeah, but this is the connectivity matrix that you get for free once you implement the like network policy simulation. And then they compare like the expected results pinging on eigenhost pods with the simulated results.
Okay, so breaking it down, trying to make the question a little more explicit. I think I understand what you're saying. So if you write a test that for network policy ensures that pod A, you wouldn't write a test that says ensure pod A can talk to pod B, right? You'd write a test that says deploy this default deny all and then auto generate a matrix of expected connections. Like, okay.
Yeah, so you're just creating the network policy, and then
cool.
Yeah.
And then Cyclonus goes in and does all this matrix generation for you, basically.
Yeah, that's right.
Sweet. So I know today Surya and Yang can both speak more to this to me because I've reviewed it, but it's been a while. We in our conformance testing today, we like literally hard code like it's explicit. Like we literally have a matrix of pods, and then we go through and say, like, for this test, pod A should be able to talk to pod B, pod C shouldn't be able to talk to pod D, etc. Right? Am I correct in saying that, Surya?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So like something like this, I think could totally be really cool. Don't you think, Yang and Surya? Now it just pertains to like how much of a nightmare it is to implement for AMP, but
Yeah, but
if,
when we had started off with the conformance tests, right, we had looked at Cyclonus and this metrics, and then eventually I think we all wanted to reach that state. So I think it's a cool thing to have where we just create an ANP and then see that effect across different combinations based on connections of labels, right? So +1 from me. It's just a matter of figuring out how to merge this with the existing.
right. That's
tests,
the
I
tricky
guess.
part. I mean, I think
Mhm.
first we would do like a development experiment alongside it, right? Like leave the conformance tests as they are, and start either in our repo, well, probably in our repo, just kind of having a little directory to hack on Cyclonus, maybe even with a custom build tag. But like this would be really great. I think this is step one, and then step two is the table, right? Because this is more like core infrastructure improvement versus like the table output view is more of like really great, good new tooling that we don't have.
Right.
Well, maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's not. Maybe it's more important that we work on the tooling first, actually, because we already have conformance tests. I'm not really sure. Because I know it's going to be complicated for users. Like the moment they get a bunch of ANPs in a cluster, along with net NPs, to like understand, what that looks like in terms of traffic flows. Cool.
So
Anyway,
I could
I'm kind of,
also I started thinking about like what the table could look like with AMP if we'd
Mhm.
like to look at that.
yeah, sure. No, this is really, really great. So let's check that out.
And yeah, also looked into the code to see what you would change and where.
Oh,
But
that's awesome.
kind of nitty gritty. So yeah, there's this Cyclonus analyze parse command that's also used in the test function. And that's kind of what we were seeing earlier with this table.
Mhm.
So it gives you like the ingress and egress, and then the targets, or these will be the subjects for AMP. And then all the network policy rules that have that target. And then peer and protocol. So what you would want to do is probably add these features for ANP. So first, for the subject, you would just support a namespace selector and a node selector, if that's a thing.
Mhm.
And then you'd support same labels and node selectors for the peer. And then probably add an action column with priorities.
Yep. Cool. That would be so helpful. I mean, I think that was one of the things in our initial design of the KEP, and we've talked about over and over, is like having good tooling from the get-go, which is really hard, right? Because our API is still changing and there's other priorities, but something like this would be really great. So is there anyone who has other opinions? So like basically what you're saying, Hunter, is like the bones are good. We just need to decide like where to allocate resources to get, what you've presented here done, essentially, and how to prioritize it.
Yeah. I think I have a good idea of like how we would implement it. And yeah. I think one thing too is we could like decide if there are parts we will never want from Cyclonus, and then just remove all that code to simplify the project, or maybe just leave
Yep.
it untouched or something?
No, I think we should definitely remove it. I don't think that's bad, especially considering like Cyclonus is still existing in its original place, right? Like I don't feel like we have a responsibility to keep it all as is, essentially.
Right.
Like we should make it work for us. And definitely credit Matt because this was like a really awesome project.
Yeah.
Okay, so how about this? I really like everything you've done here. I'm stoked on it. Do you want to maybe break the two things we talked about and try to make issues and like break it down on in our project so then we can actually start kind of working on some things. I still am kind of unclear on what we should prioritize. It might be like what people are interested in, right? Or
Okay.
what you're interested in. I don't know if you want to kind of keep going down this path. You've already done a great job. So
Yeah, I'll definitely keep working on this.
cool. But I don't want it to be like totally all on you, which is why I'm saying like if there's stuff
Yeah.
you can break up to
Yeah.
get people to help you, I'm happy to try to help pick up an issue or two and hack along with you. So if we could just take this Google Doc, either make an issue and nest this Google Doc in it, or make an issue kind of explaining like the steps or multiple issues explaining the steps of what we need to do, that would be great.
Yeah. Yeah, let me do that.
Sweet. Any other opinions and thoughts on all this work? This is awesome, Hunter. Like, thanks for diving in super, super deep here. No one had done it. No one took up that slack, but I think it could be a real differentiator for this project. Like, imagine if we get to KubeCon and we can literally show a table explaining what these admin network policies are doing, like in the terminal. I think people would love it, especially because it's coming from upstream.
Yeah. So it sounds like we kind of want to work fast on this.
That's like a dream, right? I'm happy to help facilitate as fast as you want to go. I just don't want to put it all on you because that's what happens in upstream a lot is like you did this deep dive and then you end up owning everything. But if you're excited to get going, I'm happy to help review and help out with it. So
Okay. Yeah. I'll start with the issues and then I guess we'll go from there.
basically you are already the expert with the Cyclonus directory in our repository. So, go for it. Feel free to start hacking away.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Thanks so much. That's really, really great. It's super exciting.
Yeah. Do we have any interest in pulling the most recent commits, or is that kind of a nightmare to deal with?
Well, I think maybe that's one of the issues we need to make is like, how do we deal with the upstream, right? Like, is this going to be like are we going to treat whatever we're going to turn this tooling into as like a hard fork where we kind of like make it our own? Or is it going to be sort of a soft fork that we continue to try to keep up to date with Cyclonus, which is Cyclonus like iterating really fast? I don't think there's that many new commits, is there?
Not that many new commits. Just I know I contributed like a fail fast option that isn't yet in our version and stuff, and I'm wondering if there are other features that might be useful. But we could always like cherry pick stuff that we want if anybody asks for it later.
100%. I'll leave that one up to you, Hunter. Like I said, I think you're the expert here on this. So if you want to cherry pick stuff or even do a rebase to get all the existing commits, like feel free to do it.
Okay, sounds good.
Cool. Bunch of exciting stuff. All our meetings recently, they look short, but then they turn into long ones. That's a good thing. More people. Cool. Anything else folks want to talk about today? Okay. Then we will get out of here with 6 minutes to spare. I'm going to add a note to the agenda just to talk, just to make sure everyone knows that we had a good talk about Cyclonus today, and that Hunter's going to kind of keep going on that train. But yeah, otherwise that's all I have for today. Thanks so much for coming, everyone. I really, really appreciate it, and we'll keep moving forward.
Nice week.
See y'all later.